And let's just take a 14-year-old coming into the high school, a Waldorf high school. Here they are with this raw emotional life. They are experiencing things in a new way, and they see the world often in black and white terms. It's not particularly subtle the way they see it. You will hear, perhaps you've heard your children say, I hate him, or I hate her, I hate this, I hate that teacher. And if you really ask them, they don't actually hate the teacher. It could be that the teacher has said, you have got to do better than that, or this isn't the best you can do, or something like that. And their reaction is a very strong one. One has the feeling they do not master their emotions. How can they? They're just experiencing these new emotions with a new intensity. And so, in what one decides to teach, one recognizes this and gives them support through this stage. And it's not as if you're saying then directly, behave in this way, settle down, don't say that. No, you give them lessons when you're teaching in which it's more subtle and less direct. So for example, how does that young person see the world? They often see it as a tension between this side and that side. Where do we experience that historically? We experience it in revolutions. And that's a little bit what they're going through. It's a revolution against what? Against the values that they have always had. Their parents may say something, and they may have accepted that at the age of 11 or 12, but now they say no. It's quite natural, because they have to discover who they are. They're not their parents. And so in the history lesson, we show them, through the French Revolution, through the Russian Revolution, what happens when people have this strong feeling, I don't agree with the world. I don't agree with what's going on. And in the revolution, one can see the tension between opposites. That's what the young person is going through at the age of 14, and that's why there is such resonance for such a lesson. It could be in art, and one would choose then to do black and white drawings. That's a little bit how they see the world. It's black and white. Now, much of what we do then with the freshman, the ninth grader in this phase, is in fact to help them to see what's out there in the world. One would say then, in order to understand yourself, you have to understand the world. So you give them a picture of what is out there in all subjects. And then as they go through school, you find that this emotional turmoil begins to settle down. It's still there amongst the sophomores, the 10th graders. They're a little more confident. One sees an enormous difference between girls and boys. Physical growth. You look at a 9th grade class, some of the boys are quite tiny, and the girls look like young women already. Fast forward to the end of grade 10, and it's much more balanced. The boys have caught up. And by their junior year, that difference isn't as strong. That the boys there are more settled, they're not as awkward. The girls have also settled down. And one can then, for the juniors, one can find also lessons in which one teaches to their stage of development. Now, an example of this in a Waldorf school would be Parsifal. As you may or may not know, Parsifal was written 800 years ago by Wolfgang von Eschenbach, and it's the story of a knight, the knight's journey through life. A very special knight, of course, but he had to do many things. He had to master his emotions. He had to recognize himself, find out about who he was. And that's a very difficult thing to do in life. And so one can ask the question, why would one spend 3 or 4 weeks with a group of 17-year-olds studying a book that was written 800 years ago? And of course, it is a reflection. One can find a reflection in the book of what the young person is going through. And that enables one as a teacher then to have discussions with the students. A little example that's possible with a 17-year-old that's not possible in the same way with a 14-year-old freshman. So here we are, a junior at 17 years of age. One would ask the question, after one has read that Parsifal, as a young boy, was not allowed to see any knights. You read that and you understand it's because his mother didn't want him to become a knight. Now, her own husband had been killed in combat, and so she tried to prevent him becoming a knight. And what did he do? It's the very thing he wanted to become then. So the more she protected, the more he wanted to break out of that. And so you ask the students that question. You ask them at the age of 17, were you overprotected by your parents? Protected just enough? Or not protected enough? And they are able at the age of 17 to reflect on that question in a way a 14-year-old wouldn't really be able to deal with. And the result of that are some incredibly deep and profound conversations. But what we're able to do then is to hone in on the stage of the young person's development, to be by their side during this time of turmoil, this 14 to 17 or 14 to 18